that if the industry knows how much harm they're causing, maybe they'll change how it works. And it didn't take me long to realize that they knew gambling not only hijacks your mind and body, but it also hijacks your sense of hope. So your hope then rests in the next press, the next bet. And you lose connection to the hopes and dreams that you once held for your life.
The controls that you could put in place now, like deposit limits and stuff, it is literally pointless, because you could have a deposit limit with Bet365, and then you could, once you lose that, then you can go into William Hill, and then once you lose that, you can go into Ladbrokes, and there's that many different betting sites out there that having a deposit limit is literally pointless. It would need to be a universal deposit limit. Aye, I would love us to all unite and actually try and fix the problem, because I believe if everybody working within the space done that, we would get some traction. Hello, welcome to another edition of the Elite Podcast. My name's Colin Brown, and today's guest is Kate Seselja. Kate has been working with over 10 years within the gambling harm space in Australia, and I love everything that she does, so I'm really excited for the conversation. How's things going, Kate?
Really well. It's so great to connect with you, and I love what you are doing.
Brilliant. Right, cool. We'll just fire straight into it. If you just take me back to when you were young, how you got involved with gambling and where you are today, kind of with your story.
Yeah. I was young, 18, when I first was exposed to gambling in pubs and clubs in Australia. In Sydney, where I grew up, they were everywhere. Every single social space I went into, they were there. And before I started engaging with the poker machines, what do you call them in where you are?
Aye, that was one question I was going to ask. Like the poker machines in Australia are, I think they're the FOBT machines here. So it's basically like I think it's fixed odds betting terminals they're called. So it's the roulette machines and slot machines, and you could, I think it's the same thing.
Correct. So before I engaged with those products, I didn't, you're not attuned to notice them in a way that when you have engaged with them, suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. And even if I left the house thinking I'm not going to gamble tonight, because they were there and the sounds and the lights, and it just draws you in. And unfortunately, I'm one of the people that when I first used one of those machines, I won after a couple of presses, and that's something that, I wish had never happened. Anyone who ever says that they don't like them never won the first time they used it, and they decided, you know what, that's a waste of money. I'm going to walk away from that. And unfortunately, if you do have a win, especially early on, it can just set up this pathway in your brain that you are so ill prepared for. And as a young teen, I went to school, was taught about alcohol, about drugs, about smoking, the harms that were involved. Nobody ever mentioned gambling. And yet in Sydney, where I grew up, gambling had been in pubs and clubs for decades. And so people had been harmed for a long time, but nobody spoke about it. And that was because the industry has created so much shame around the individual being the one that has the problem, not that there's an issue with the actual industry or the products. So of course, at 18, I don't understand that. I start thinking there's something wrong with me. And that shame then perpetuated this engagement with this machine that kept coming back up in my life for over a 15-year period. And it took me to age 32 when I almost took my life after losing hundreds of thousands of dollars over that period. And believing the lie that there was something wrong with me and that I just couldn't use their product correctly. When the massive shift happened for me internally was when I realized, actually, I used the machine exactly how it was designed to be used. And that this is a trap that is set socially for people to fall into because there are no safeguards, there are no consumer protections around how much you can lose, about how much time you can spend there. In fact, it's encouraged and rewarded. The longer you engage, the more you spend, the more you are treated like a VIP from the actual industry, and they make you, uh, you know, develop this really poor relationship with yourself. Um, and you know,
I could totally relate to the machines, so the FLBT machines in Scotland or the UK.
mm,
I used to walk down to the bookies saying, I'm only going to bet on the football. I'm only going to bet on the football. As soon as I opened the door, I couldn't stop myself from walking over to the machines. And it was like a magnet. That's the only way you could kind of describe it. I could not physically stop myself. And I would end up losing my money that I planned on putting in the football. I'd be back at the bank, back and forward, taking money out, losing all my money, spending the whole afternoon. Obviously, the time that you lose. And like you say, it's designed to get you addicted.
mm,
Like the spins, I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but the spins, you could actually tell where the number's going to go as soon as it comes on the screen. So again, it's designed to make you more addicted,
mm,
and it certainly got me. Obviously, when back in that time we were able to bet £100 a spin, but now it's been reduced to £2 a spin. But again, I don't believe that's helped the problem because it's shifted the problem from going into the shops to betting online.
mm,
Because I lost £3,500 on a spin online, so restricting it in the shops is almost forcing you online where most damage happens, or
mm,
certainly the most modern damage happens online. And
mm.
I, I totally relate to what you said there about it. They're just so addictive and addictive by design.
Yeah, exactly. And, those words were not in my vocabulary at the time, that this is addiction by design. This is something that happened to me. It's not who I was. It wasn't my identity. Yet the only kind of help that was available at the time was to label me as an addict and, you know, make me feel separate from other people. And I just hated that the way no one was offering me any truth about what had happened in that environment, in that engagement. And that's really become the focus of my work, is to correct those false narratives and to help liberate people from shame that was never theirs. The shame in this scenario belongs to the people who created these products and who have facilitated the growth of this industry, to the fact that Australia is the nation experiencing the most gambling harm in the world. And that atrocity rests on the backs of successive governments failing to properly address this public health crisis.
I'm sure that's very frustrating for yourself as well, especially working within that space, trying to make change. And obviously, so many blocks are in place because although the regulation over here, we have some regulation, but it is nowhere near as kind of levels that it should be because the technology we've got nowadays, it should be like if I say that I've got a gambling problem, I didn't want to gamble again, which I don't.
Mm,
I shouldn't have doors open that I could still gamble. Like, I could gamble tomorrow if I want. I can gamble tonight if I want. But I've I believe my kind of recovery and my how I've went about it kind of it builds the barriers, and I believe that you need to kind of tackle it kind of head on rather than hide from it. And like you say, I was told that it was my problem and I wasn't working a program right, or I wasn't doing enough kind of meetings and stuff like that. But it was almost putting the onus back on myself rather than um, just finding what works for me. And I believe that I have found what works for me, and I believe it could other people could find that as well. And
mm,
it's, let us say, it's just doing things like what you're doing over there. It's brilliant because I believe you're standing out from the rest, standing out for the crowd, and hopefully eventually you get your kind of breakthrough that people start listening. And I believe people obviously have started listening, but when a lot of people start listening.
mm. Oh, absolutely. There are just country after country that are impacted by gambling harm now because of digital access. And, um, there are real bad actors in the space of pretending to offer solutions or products that are meant to help people who are in or trying to be in recovery. So it's been a really hard space to try and navigate. Well, who are you, friend or foe? What, who is funding you? What is going on here? Um, and the media are often part of the problem too, because they're controlled higher up by gambling interests, and so it's been challenging trying to get the right narrative out into the public sphere. I When shame almost won and I almost took my life in 2012, I felt like there was no hope left. I tried to get help several times, and no one had really, as I said, shone any light on the truth of the whole environment. It was all about you. And when I thought about, you know what, why am I actually caring that people around me know that I've struggled with gambling? It was so empowering to think I need to actually share what happened to me, because and I did it naively in the moment, thinking that if the industry knows how much harm they're causing, maybe they'll change how it works. And it didn't take me long to realize that they knew the whole time. They knew before I was born. They knew, and they did it anyway. And that just, I think, propelled me to a new level of advocacy, because I let go of that naivety of sharing my story in the hopes of creating industry change, to this needs to be about empowering communities, of not only being aware of the threat that lies in their community if there is gambling present, but to also help people who have been impacted by gambling harm to see themselves in the correct light, to shed the shame that they shouldn't be drowning in daily, because that only drives the behavior further. If you can understand that this is addiction by design, there was intent to harm when creating these products. That's it. Whereas when you or I walked into a gambling venue, I didn't ever think gambling was going to be part of that scenario. I walked into a club to meet my boyfriend and play pool with him and hang out. I didn't understand that just over there was a machine that could hijack your mind and body in a way that is so powerful and yet invisible. You know, people would have understood I was impacted by something if I was walking around drunk or high on drugs. They're like, okay, she's physically altered by what she has experienced. But when gambling is involved, the the hijack is so powerful, but yet invisible not only to your own eyes, but to the eyes of those around you. And where we really are seeing shifts here is understanding the shift happened with smoking laws when people understood secondhand smoke, when they understood that smoke was actually impacting the lives of anyone that encountered it. Similarly, now with gambling, we understand that it's not just the individual that's harmed, it's people around. You know, we're all being harmed as a society because of this product. So we talk about, are you experiencing secondary impacts of gambling harm? That is where we, you know, kind of bring the whole spectrum of gambling harm into a new sphere. Because when you understand how gambling harm is happening in your community, even though you may never have gambled or have someone directly in your family that's gambled, your best friend may have lost their house. Your co-worker might have committed suicide. You know, somebody's business may have gone under. And they are the impacts of gambling harm that are going unnoticed in our, you know, current communities.
I mean, I see in Scotland, mostly in Scotland anyway, people reach out to me. A lot of young people. I still play football with a lot of young people, and gambling is just so like. I mean, it's no one or two. Can some people that do it? Everybody does it. I could count on one hand the amount of people I know that doesn't gamble, unless can. And I think that's why it was important that I came out and obviously told my story to try and break the stigma, to try and normalise speaking about it rather than it's just obviously advertised as fun. So it's only advertised as fun. There's no adverts on the reality. So it's like it's natural that kids and anyone that get involved in gambling get involved because they think, like you say, the product's not addictive. It's only fun. So let's say when I first played my machine, it was the fruit machines. I put 50 pence into win £5, and the dopamine release I got when I had that win was incredible. And I didn't have any kind of trauma growing up, or certainly none that I could remember. So it wasn't because of how my life was that I gambled. But as soon as I did, I was like, wow, that was euphoric feeling. I couldn't wait to go back down. And then the destructive cycle started from there, because the next time I went down, I didn't win. And then I ended up starting stealing and stuff to try and get money because I was chasing that feeling. And it was totally not my character to do that. Like I would never ever have done that if I was not gambling. But like you say, how powerful gambling is, it makes you do things that you didn't want. Like I say, like my mum, I love her more than anything, but the amount of times I let her down because of gambling was ridiculous. And I loved, like my mum, for example, but I love gambling more. And that hurts to say because it's a fact. Every time I put gambling first and I didn't care about the consequences. And like you say, in that time, the self-worth it's on the floor. And the amount of times you try and fail, it almost hurts you even more because you feel like you're helpless. So that's obviously when the suicidal thoughts come in, and it's a reality. It's not just thoughts. It's like this is going to happen, and I know there's so many people out there that will be taking their life through gambling, and then the stigma around it, it's like nobody's going to come out and say, oh, they took, or no, not enough people are going to say, oh, gambling killed my son, or
mm,
gambling killed my daughter, or stuff like that, because it's like the embarrassment of it, like
mm,
almost that gambling's overpowered them. But obviously, me and you could relate 100% to how they feel,
mm,
and there will be a bit of guilt there, obviously, from the family, so they don't want to talk about it. But I believe having conversations and obviously trying to avoid anybody feeling that way is so important. And it's like I believe a lot in what I'm doing. I think like you seem like on a very similar journey. Obviously, you're deeper into your journey than me, but I believe a lot of the things you're saying, I totally relate to it, and what I'm trying to do over here. And it's one of the proudest things that I've done is stand alone rather than join the crowd, because it would have been probably easy to message, and I had messages of guys saying, "Look, I could open doors for you," but as soon as I done a bit of digging into their background, I was like, "Nah, they're not the doors I want to get open." So I've kind of took the long way around, and it is frustrating and hard at times, but I could sleep at night. I could sleep knowing that I'm doing the best thing, and I know that I'm doing it for a good place. So that matters more than than money. But obviously, money helps. But um,
I know.
but I
I being in advocacy here, every single time I look around the table and I think I'm the only unpaid person in this room, and I'm okay with that. It's crazy on one level that this issue, the money that gets generated through this issue, and yet as an advocate, zero funding. If I was advocating for breast cancer or I would have money thrown at me left, right, and center. But
I believe they're probably looking at you and thinking, right, no, she'll get to the problem quicker than other people. So it's like they don't want to fix the problem. Like I spoke to the girl that's going to be dishing out the funding in Scotland, and I says, look, I've been doing this. I've put tens of thousands of my own money into the project that I'm doing because I believe that it's different to other kind of ways of tackling it, and kind of could show a big list of things that I've been doing. And she just looked at me. She actually looked me up and down and was like, "No, you'll have to join one of the other charities." And I was like, "Well, I I don't want to do that because I believe that I need to stay in my own lane, and it's made me more determined to show that what I'm doing is kind of like it's from a good place, and we want to create change. At the end of the day, we want solutions. The relapse rates and stuff they're too high. Kind of like your NHS waiting lists, they're too high. So let's try and I didn't see people working towards solutions. Like I've been to gambling conferences and stuff, and I've left, and I've thought I'll go to the same conference next year, and we'll be talking about the same stuff. It's like where is the progress? Where are we taking actions, and where are we trying to create change? It's just like we'll talk about the problem, and everybody in that room knows the problem. So it's like what we actually talking about here? Or there'll be stats that 1.4 million people in the UK have got a gambling problem. See, if somebody came to me when I had a gambling problem and says, "Have you got a gambling problem?" I would have said no, because I was in denial. So the stats are pointless. All this money gets spent on research, but it's not getting to the bottom of the issue. Like I say, I believe it's so much higher than it's kind of portrayed us. And I know that Australia's as bad, if not worse. And obviously America's getting that way as well. It's just everywhere. And although we have made, in the UK, we've made some strides, but it's little steps rather than strides, because let's say there's still doors open. Like, for example, if I ban myself from the bookmakers, I need to take a photo or a phone up and send a photo, but I need to, when I'm on the phone, I need to say exactly where the bookmaker is. So I need to give the street, the location, and you could be on the phone for an hour and you could only give 10 bookmakers. And then Like I done that, and I was driving 30 miles to put a bet on because it wasn't one of the places I was banned from. And then I would then go into I'd say, I'm going to go down to the bookies, and I would go in and they would let me put a bet on because the girls or the guys in there are on minimum wage. So they're not going to challenge an angry gambler
Mm,
that's desperate for a bet because it's no worth their while.
yeah.
Ken, so let's say with the technology we've got nowadays, they could give everyone a unique code and stuff like that, so that like if you're banned on your code, then you didn't get in. Or there's just so many ways they could actually work towards solutions, and the fact that they're not working towards solutions shows me that they don't care and they don't want to fix the problem. And let's say I do believe that it needs to be called out, and anyone that's taking money or working in partnership with betting companies, it's just an absolute disgrace for me because they are doing more damage working with these companies, saying that they're helping the problem and helping problem gamblers and try to reduce it. It's like, no, it's all about money. They're just money making machines, and they try and manipulate you into believing that their lived experience is valuable. But it's no valuable if you take the other side. If you're playing for the other team, then lived experience means nothing.
Mhm.
So I feel quite strongly about that, and it's something that I kind of want to talk about more this year because I believe it needs called out, because these people that have had lived experience of gambling and they're working hand in hand with industry, they're causing a lot more damage nowadays than they were when they were gambling, and
Mm.
it's making people realise that, and let's say calling them out on it, because I just totally disagree. I totally get frustrated when I see it. I see it every day when you go on LinkedIn and stuff, and there's safer gambling experts that are basically working for the industry, and you're thinking, it's so ridiculous that it's laughable, but it's not laughable because it's a serious matter.
Mm.
And and I would love for one day for them to be called out and actually realise how much damage they're causing, because there's real people struggling.
There's not only real people struggling, but it also doesn't stem the flow of people who are still walking blindly into that trap, um, because there isn't that transparency around what the product's designed to do, how quickly and effortlessly it relieves you of your money. Um, if I remember when I was at in high school, and my brother said, "Look, Kate, please, just promise me you won't do drugs." And I witnessed my best friend's brother um, tried marijuana for the first time and ended up having a psychosis. And I thought, you know what, I'm never going near that. And that was enough to help me make an informed choice about not just don't do it, but to understand that there are real consequences that you don't know whether or not it's going to impact you that same way. And imagine if we could take that understanding of, what seems like, and the thing I push back on most is the way the industry gets to say, we're just providing entertainment. Well, I don't know how you like to be entertained, but if you know, I was exposed to something that could make me want to pour every single cent I've ever had access to and then some into a machine, why would I want to do that? Like, if I'd have known that in the beginning, that this is a very likely outcome, for engaging with this product, do you think I would have gone near it? But when it's literally everywhere, and it's not only when I was 18 and first exposed to it, you had to go to a venue. Now it's on people's phones. It's coming at them in ways that they didn't ask for. It's like, here's so many free spins. Just get addicted, and then you'll start pouring your own money into this app before you know it. It's so despicable
Yeah,
how
you can't
predatory.
really. Aye, you can't escape it now, and that's why I think unless you tackle it head on, it's always going to linger around in the background. Um, aye, uh, it's obviously women gambling as well as going up a lot as well. So, and I think the stigma's getting better. Certainly over in this country, there's more women talking about it, but again, it's designed. Adverts on the TV are on when Loose Women's on, um, advertising the bingo, and then all your kind of there's competitions on the kind of daytime TV when kids, parents or women are sitting with their children,
Mm,
and it could easily spiral out of control. And let's say some people can just have a flutter now and again, but I believe the number that can't control it or spend. There's obviously different levels. Some people could maybe lose more than they plan to lose. Some people can't lose everything because they can't control it.
mm,
But even the people that are losing more than they can, kind of means if somebody's on 50 grand a year, for example, and they're losing 20 at gambling, that's a problem. Like they're still getting on with day to day life, but it's maybe impacting in a slight way. But kind of the fact that somebody could lose everything to gambling and there's no controls in place, it's no based on your wage or stuff like that. Someone that's no got a job can lose as much as I can when I've got a job.
mm,
I just think it's just not acceptable, and it's that people can do that and destroy their lives. They could literally destroy your life in a night, in minutes.
mm, mm. I think just even pushing back on that narrative, like you said, just have a flutter. It's like, no, that's their terminology to make light of an engagement, and it's you may be exposed to it at some point in your life and it didn't have an impact, but that exposure can be exploited at any moment in time over your lifetime. They just wait patiently until, say, you lose a job, or you lose a partner, or something in your world shifts, and there it is waiting for you, representing hope or joy or engagement or connection, and that vulnerability will be exploited at some point. Um, Again, it's how it's been designed.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's went too far down as well. Like it's went on for years. So like fixing the problem, you'll never ever be able to fix the problem in our generation because there's too many people that are too far down the line. But we could obviously stem the flow of people getting addicted by putting these controls in place. Because if we don't, I believe it'll get to it'll be probably the worst addiction out there. I think gambling and porn are two of the biggest addictions for young people,
mm,
because they're chasing the short term dopamine. Obviously, social media is an addiction as well. Can people just scroll all day and it's the similar thing? They're chasing the feeling, and you procrastinate off the back of it. Aye,
mm.
it's just and
Have
some
you
kind of change needs to happen.
have you seen the documentary The Social Dilemma?
I've no. I think I've heard that though. To be fair,
They it goes into how social media was created to addict, and they used the technology that gambling had already refined. So, again, it's that proof of intent to cause harm, intent to capture and control human beings in a way that's so despicable
hmm
and so against who we are as human beings, that we are built for connection, we're built for purpose, and that is getting hijacked. And I talked yesterday or the other day with somebody about how gambling not only hijacks your mind and body, but it also hijacks your sense of hope. So your hope then rests in the next press, the next bet, and you lose connection to the hopes and dreams that you once held for your life. And that is something that, is the reason why I started the Hope Project, to disrupt that connection and, as I said, create a pathway for people to be curious about, okay, what don't I know about this industry? What don't I know about how I was exposed to gambling? What don't I know about myself? That, how to reconnect with my self-esteem, with purpose, and be able to develop a constructive relationship with the adversity that you've encountered. Because lived experience is learning. Everybody has lived experience of something, but to be able to utilize your lived experience to create positive change, I believe that's why we are meant to communicate our struggles with others, so that there can be collective learning, there can be collective wisdom. And cultures that have been around for millions of years, they use storytelling to inform their communities. But as a modern world, we've become so curated to only show people this perfect persona that we want to project, rather than actually connect human to human and be vulnerable, be fallible. And my son connected me with my humanness that morning after I almost took my life, and he confronted me and said, "Mum, no one could find you. Everyone was worried, like, what happened?" And I just didn't want to have that conversation with him, because I tried to keep everything that I was struggling with from my children. And I thought, uh, I said, "Mate, I've made so many mistakes. I just don't know what to do." And he said, "Mum, everyone makes mistakes." And I just went, "Oh my gosh, yes, they do. Why did I think that I couldn't, like, be okay with the fact that I was human, that I had struggled, that I thought that disqualified me from being worthy of a normal life, from being whole, from being a good parent, a good partner, a good anything." And that wasn't the truth. I just lost sight of who I was at that point in time.
Aye, definitely. I think one of the big things that helped me was being so honest about my addiction. Obviously, telling my story when I felt ready. I was 9 months in, and in that first 9 months, I'd done so much kind of work on myself, and I tried to read a lot of stuff about how your brains become addicted, and I listened to a lot of podcasts as well. Took inspiration for people that had turned the corner. That was one of the reasons why. That was my initial thought when I started Gambling Leap, was to do on podcasts, because it had helped me so much. And I think it's just a new style, kind of getting relatable content out there. That will be people maybe listening to this or watching this that would maybe say, "Can what I totally relate to what they're saying," and that alone gives people hope
Mm,
that myself and yourself have turned the corner, and we're kind of so passionate about what we're doing because we know there's somebody maybe out there listening to this that is struggling, and we want to help them, and we didn't want them to feel like we felt.
mm,
And that is where lived experience is so important, because you can give people the hope that you, like ourselves, we have turned the corner. So I no, great what you're doing with the Hope Project, and it's been going 10 years, so, well, over 10 years, so that's incredible.
Yeah,
Is
it's
it?
it's just been an absolute labor of love. It's been hair pulling out frustration at times because of, you know, the lack of political will. Um, 2 years ago, we almost got some reforms in place, and the industry, obviously killed that the night before they were meant to be announced. But what I, what I focus on is the, every time it feels hard, every time it feels like it's too big, I'll get a message. And, when I messaged you this morning, there was a message that had come through from somebody that heard a podcast that just came out yesterday, and they work for the industry, but not in a managerial perspective, but from in a hospitality job.
Hmm.
And she said, I it made me feel sick, watching people, um, lose everything and feeling powerless to be able to stop it, because her boss was actively encouraging the behavior. So, I just assured her that whenever I refer to the industry, I'm not talking about low level workers in venues that are just trying to make a living, that are put in impossible situations where they're, you know, witnessing the harm up close, but yet are absolutely bound by, the higher ups from actually having any kind of um,
And we're all,
power to change it.
aye, we're all kind of tied to money. Like I say, I'm in a fortunate position where I still work along full time alongside this, but
Mm,
I totally get it that people need to make a living,
mm,
and can the temptation will be out there to take money where you don't want to take money, because at the end of the day we need to live, and at this kind of maybe send out a message in some way. But um, I do think that looking at the bigger picture, it does do actually more damage than help. So let's say I'm in a fortunate position that I need to hopefully get a voice out there that I could speak about. I don't believe I'm really in a position right now that I've got a voice, because I'm on my own, but um, I'm hoping in the future I can, and I'll maybe get listened to, and obviously I hope that you do as well.
mm.
Could you tell me a wee bit more about the TED Talks that you've done as well? Because that's obviously a brilliant thing that you do. I actually watched one that you done. I think it was on YouTube, and you came across brilliant in it as well. So,
Oh, thank you. I I wish, if I could do it again, I would do it differently. That was, quite early in my advocacy. I think it's there's so much more that I know, now, and I love giving presentations, whether they're online or in person, in schools, workplaces, universities, anyone that'll have me, just to be able to transform hearts and minds and think about gambling in a different context, in the correct context of how it needs to be understood. And so that communities or families can come together and wrap around somebody who may be impacted in a different way, with fresh eyes, rather than the eyes of judgment or wanting them to change. Just hurry up and fast forward through your struggles so that you can be normal again. You have to understand this person has been absolutely impacted, and like, if somebody had drunk a bottle of vodka, you wouldn't sit them down and try and talk to them about how alcohol is impacting them. It's not going in. They're not going to hear it because under the influence of that product. Same with gambling. If you're actively in it, you don't need to be met with, shame. You need to be met with compassion and facts about the whole gambling landscape, that this is a predatory industry that is causing you harm, not that you are harming yourself and others. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've been challenged on when I've said that it's a predatory industry, and I absolutely believe it is because I experienced it with your VIP schemes and stuff. Like times when I was trying to stop gambling, I would log into my account or I'd get an email or something, and I would have a £200 free bet there, and it was like I knew it was always going to be there when I logged into my account, because I think they obviously analyse your patterns to see, right, he's no gambled in a few days, but he's lost 10 grand in the last month. So let's throw money back at him, because the longer you're maybe staying off it and maybe trying to change your life, the temptation of I think that's the difference between gambling and other addictions as well, as you think that another gamble will get you out of your trouble.
Mm,
Whereas an alcohol or someone with a problem with alcohol doesn't say, if I have another drink, it might solve all my problems. But like I say, with gambling, you're one bet away from turning your life back into a positive place, or that's what your brain tells you.
that's your brain
Um,
tells you. But
Aye, but I mean, I've been there as well, where I've had the big ones when I've been down to nothing and I've been desperate for this one, and I've got the one, but it just makes the problem worse, because it almost reaffirms that you made the right decision to
mm,
risk no eating for days to
mm,
put that bet on. So the next time you're in that position, it's almost like it was fate. This is going to happen again. I'm going to win, and everything's going to be great. And um, but again, that's where it hijacks your mind into thinking this is like
mm,
you tell yourself, I'm a good gambler. I've got a strategy, and I probably tried them all out there, and I actually had a lot of good ones, but it was being able to control it and maintain it. And I believe that everybody loves getting money, or everybody loves the feeling of winning, but
mm,
it's dealing with emotions when you lose that a
mm,
lot of people struggle with. And you go back and chase. Obviously, chasing losses is a massive sign that you've got a problem. But how many people do you know that chases losses? Pretty much everybody that I
mm,
know.
mm,
It's just something that people do. I don't think I know many people that gamble for the fun. They're gambling to win money or the feeling. So it's it's a slippery slope. Obviously, we know that very well. But aye, is there anything else you kind of want to tell us?
I think it's, you know, you only have to look at the the profits the industry is boasting, that they're making. They only get to profit because you lose. Like that's the whole business model, is to ensure that you lose. And if you are, inactive, then they're coming for you. They're giving you the prompts. They're making you, um, stay engaged, because the more time that you spend in their engagement, the more money you'll lose. It's just heartbreaking how many times people have said, I was trying to stop, and then, yeah, I get this message or this prompt or this phone call. It's that insidious that it's, even if you are feeling like you're trying to get a handle on it, it's always poking you, trying to lure you back in. And I think that's really something that isn't properly called out, because, yeah,
I mean, I think like things like the controls that you could put in place now, like deposit limits and stuff,
mm,
it is literally pointless, because you could have a deposit limit with Bet365, and then you could, once you lose that, then you can go into William Hill, and then once you lose that, you can go into Ladbrokes, and there's that many different betting sites out there that having a deposit limit is literally pointless. It would need to be a universal deposit
Yes.
limit. So like, I'll set my deposit limit at £100 a month. Right, I think that's affordable, and then can ideally affordability checks on that. But if you set the amount that like, I was banned for 5 years online, and as soon as my 5 years was up, I was desperate to have a bet, and in that 5 years, I still bet every single day. By the way, so it shows how poor the kind of controls are in place. But in that, when the 5 years was up, I phoned up and I says, "Can I start betting again?" They says, "Right, there's the 24-hour cooling off period." I says, "Right, no problem." But I got £1,000 a month as my new limit after 5 years of accepting that I had a problem. And £1,000 a month, is that acceptable for somebody to lose that has got a problem? Of course it's no. And like I say, once I lost £1,000 there, I went on to another site, and then I went on to another site, and it was just like it's endless how much you could lose. And obviously now they've got GamStop in the UK. I don't know if you've got anything like that. Will that work abroad? I don't think it will, in Australia.
Gamban works in Australia. But we have a national self-exclusion register bet stop, but it has had some issues, and unfortunately, the government isn't taking it seriously.
Yeah. The way, like over in the UK, you've got the GamStop, which bans you for all UK-based casinos, but there's obviously offshore casinos that you can bet on endlessly, and that seems to be a big focus on a lot. You've probably seen it, like the black market is like, oh, the black market's the enemy, but the regulated market is pretty much every bit as bad. Like I say, there's loopholes that you could jump through all day long. So it's almost like blaming them for everything. But it doesn't wash with me, like not at all.
There are governments around the world that actually do take protecting the wealth of their country seriously. Unfortunately, Australia isn't one of them. It is a global issue, and it can be addressed. There are plenty of safeguards and, you know, innovations that are accessible, but there's just a lack of political will to enact them.
Aye, absolutely. Like I said earlier, with the technology we've got nowadays, we shouldn't be having an option for people that accept they've got a problem. And until we address that, our awareness talks and everything else is pointless. Like I say, I've delivered a number of awareness talks, and I love doing them as well. You get a great feeling, great energy in the room, where you do feel, especially with the lived experience, that it has an impact, but it's having an impact on 20 or 30 people that are listening. It's in the grand scheme of things, it's really it's really doing nothing. But you could only work with what you've got, and if doing awareness talks is helping a small number of people, then great. But I believe on a larger scale, it needs to be changes from the government, from the industry, and from the people that are working within the space. We need to take responsibility, and I believe that until that happens, we'll be in the same position in 10 years' time, like you've been doing it 10 years, and I didn't want that to happen. I want people to have a voice, and obviously when you reached out to come on, I was like, brilliant, because I'd looked at all your stuff and I was like, she's exactly the sort of person that I want to be aligned with and working with and trying to get the message out together, because I think it's very rare. And although that there's definitely a lot of good people within the space, but they're being influenced too much by the money that they need to get to live. And I would love us to all unite and actually try and fix the problem, because I believe if everybody working within the space done that, we would get some traction.
Agreed. agreed. It's yeah. I feel like I'm building, an international coalition, and you're definitely one of those players in that space, and it's great to connect with other countries and um, share insights. And I really thank you for your time and what you've been doing. And any way I can support your work, let me know.
I totally echo what you're saying there. I think we'll definitely get a chat off air and see how we could kind of work together going forward, because I believe we're totally aligned with what we're doing. So looking forward to it. So I will leave it at that. But thanks to everyone for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And thanks very much, Kate.